Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Fresh Brewed Kentucky Politics. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be covering some really exciting topics like Beshear pretending like he's still making people mask up. We're going to be talking about some of what the caucus is meeting on tonight. Supposedly, what I'm told they're meeting on. You know, who knows if I'm right or wrong on that. We might even talk a little bit about government spending and taxpayer-funded lobbying. We're going to talk about the impeachment findings just a little bit because I want to arm you guys. So when you're speaking with these legislators who have, quite frankly, so screwed over Kentucky by not impeaching the governor, you know what to say to them. There's some talk of our cost bill coming in on the impeachment, so we'll talk about what I know there. And then, we'll kind of talk a little bit about voting with your dollars a little bit better and what it means and who you support. So I'm kind of breaking it down for you. First, guys, I'm going to drop our link tree down here for you there in the chat. You can follow that to our merch shop. That is shop.brewedco, shop.brewedco.com. You can also donate to us at donate.brewedco.com if you want to help with our costs of the impeachment or the other advocacy work we do, which we will talk about a little bit here as far as that goes. And we will, you can also come by the shop and buy our coffee online, all that great stuff, share, subscribe, all that stuff people say to do to spread the word. I'm not really much into it. We just started doing a podcast here, but, just do that stuff that all the other podcasters always ask you to do. So getting into it here. So Beshear recently came out and said he is not lifting his mask mandate anytime soon. We're hearing about more and more states. I believe we're up to 16 states that have lifted their mask mandates. That is 16 states have lifted their mask mandates. And Governor Beshear, being confronted with that information, says they are wrong, I am right. So remember, guys, it is becoming quite clear as we go through this entire battle, that this is extremely tribal and it is all about who you listen to. And what do I mean by that? Well, people all the time say, you're science deniers, you're denying this, or you're not following the law, so that makes you bad because you're not closing like you're supposed to, or whatever it may say. And something to understand and to keep in mind is that is literally, and this is a perfect example, that is actually one man's opinion on what they should be doing or not. Point in case that we have all these states that are opening up, they're lifting their mask mandates, and they're allowing people to go about their normal lives like normal, right? Shame they even had to ask in the first place, but they're letting them do all these things, and there's not a single person who's saying, look at what on the other side of things, if our guy doesn't say okay, it's not okay yet, but all these other people are saying okay. Are you telling me these 16 other states are just science deniers too? You're going to sit there and tell me you chastise me because I think I know better than Andy Beshear does, but yet then you've got 16 other governors now saying, no, they know better than you, but somehow you're smarter than them. At that point, it is just very clear you are listening to whoever reinforces your worldview the most. And that is a crying shame, because I think we should be all a little more open in who we're listening to in data. I think all of us, if we were to be honest, and some of you guys, hardcore people, maybe more hardcore than I am, may not agree with this, but I think initially when lockdowns first came and even masks first came, it was like, okay, yeah, it's something we do. I think as time wore on, it became quite clear who is at risk and who is not and how they protect themselves. A lot of that died off, and we're like, why are we doing these things when it's clear who's at risk and who's not? Why do I need to wear a mask because we're worried about stopping the spread when, what you're talking about is the risk you want to take on? And the back push argument to that is always, well, when you take on that risk, yeah, you may catch it. Yeah, you may be okay because you're not at risk. So take, for example, me, I'm 28. And in my age group, there's been 2 deaths in the entire state. I think it is highly, highly unlikely I die from COVID if I catch it. I think it is very likely. Of course, with how I live my life, I should have already had COVID. If it's really as infectious as you guys say it is, I should have already had it. So quite clearly, I've either had it and not known it, or it's not nearly as infectious as you say it is, whatever. But with that being stated, you say, well, that's fine for you to catch it, but we're worried about spreading it to others. And that just really doesn't hold water. And you see it quite quickly crumble when we say, well, if you're so worried about it, stay home. They say, well, but you can transfer it to other people. How am I going to transfer it to other people? In order for me to transfer it to you, you have to be in the same place I am. If you're so worried about catching COVID that if you catch this incredibly infectious disease that is spreading like crazy and it's dropping people in your mind like flies, and you think you're super at risk for it, if you think you are really at risk for it, or you're really worried about catching it, you need to take some life choices there. You need to look around and say, oh gosh, do I really need to go to the grocery store? Or do I want to use Instacart? Do I really need to go to the grocery store? Or do I want to use curbside? Do I really need to go get that cup of coffee from Brewed? Or maybe I should just make it at home and stay home if I'm so worried about it, right? If you are that worried about catching COVID that you feel at this time, with this many cases, we have 4.4 million people in this entire state. And if you're that worried about the very small percentage that supposedly actively have COVID. I mean, we've already had, 400, how many cases have we already had? Something like 400,000 positive cases. Is that correct? And so it is, I'm going to double check that real quick. I'm sorry, guys. I should know this already. I think we've had 400,000 cases. Let's see here. We've had 411,000 cases. That's right. Okay. We've had 411,000 cases. And if you think so already 10% of Kentuckians have tested positive for COVID. And so you're that worried about it. You're that worried. Stay home. Let the rest of us live our lives. This dirty mask you have us putting on, and it is dirty. I don't care what you say. You could be like, well, it's your fault for not cleaning as much. Well, it's your fault for leaving your house if you're so worried about it then. Just stay home. Do you really need to go out and get that TV? I mean, that's really the point. If you're that scared that you need to require somebody else to go wear a mask everywhere they go, because keep in mind, the reason why you wear a mask is to, quote unquote, protect others. What are you protecting others from? Well, you're protecting others from if you have COVID. See, you've been wearing a mask for the last 8-9 months because at some point in that 8-9 months, there might have been 5 days where you've had this magical disease that's killing everyone, but somehow you have it and you don't know it. And at the same time, you might spread it. So you got to wear this mask everywhere. And in turn, what we're seeing is you're wearing really dirty masks. You're touching your face all the time. In fact, Dr. Fauci even felt the same way. He even wrote papers about how masks may have contributed to the Spanish flu. And so, it's like they act like it's settled science that, okay, if you wear this mask, no. Up until this pandemic, it was not settled science on it. And suddenly it all changed. And I think it's really about security theater, me personally. The longer this has gone on, the more I've seen there is no correlation between when you see states like Florida that haven't had mask mandates and California, and you're seeing such similar numbers. And even when they required masks, you didn't see a drop in infection rate. I didn't. I don't know if you guys did. You think you'd see some drop. You never saw a drop. You never saw it taking effect. Actually, in fact, we're seeing a drop now. And if anything, people are wearing masks less and less and less. And yet we're seeing a drop. It just doesn't appear to be effective. And the attack on that is always, well, that's because not everybody's complacent. Yeah, I understand that. But listen, at least initially, I guarantee you 95% of people were wearing masks when they were first told. 95% of people wear a mask when they were first told to. I guarantee it. And I'm sorry, but if 95, even if half the people were wearing a mask everywhere they go like they were supposed to initially, you would still see some drop. Surely. But you just didn't really see it. And it becomes quite clear when we have such a low infection rate, lower than, I think it's been a long time, lower than when the mask mandate was first put in place, but yet we're not lifting the mask mandate. Listen, it's not sneaking up on people. They know COVID exists. Lift the mask mandate, and on the flip side too, at the same time, let's just go ahead. I mean, people are just not wearing masks. They just aren't. It is the truth. People are not wearing masks. Any store you go into a Walmart, you'll see 5, 10, 20 people not wearing a mask. You just see them not wearing a mask. It's becoming impossible to enforce, especially now. Now, what I think is after the legislation leaves session, we're going to see the enforcers roll out a lot more on this because they're not worried about the repercussions legislators might be getting. I think that's why we're not seeing as much right now. But it's just, I'm sorry, it's just not sitting there, and it's tone deaf when you see all these other states opening up and you're still sitting there, and it makes it very clear, especially when the majority of Kentuckians, listen, like I said, you want to wear a mask? You can wear a mask. That's okay. You can do that, right? People are getting vaccinated. They can do that. You don't want to wear masks. You don't want to be around people not wearing masks. Stay home. Just stay home. It's easy. It's really simple. Just stay home. Just stay home. That's it. That's all you got to do. But that's, on masks, right? And like I said, my staff will wear a mask if people come in and ask them to wear a mask while they're serving you. They've been instructed to wear a mask if people ask them to. That's part of our HB1 plan. I have there's a COVID testing site, funny enough, kind of near Brewed up front. And if a COVID tester comes in, I sure hope they wear a mask, right? Because they're in a lot higher risk than the normal human being is. And that's just using common sense to say, hey, if I'm in a high-risk area, if I'm around high-risk people, if I'm coming in contact a lot with high risk, then, maybe I should just be a little more careful. And those are all decisions you make. You know what the risk is. And I don't know who needs to hear this out there. And I know this isn't necessarily the most popular subject in the world, but I don't know who needs to hear this. The government is not in charge of keeping you safe. The government is just not in charge. It is not their job to keep you safe. It is their job to essentially, as it was imagined by our founders, to enforce contracts, provide basic services, such mainly just enforcing of the Constitution, right? Their job is not to ensure that you don't do something dumb and possibly kill yourself. It really isn't their job. And I don't know what to tell you. Stop leaning on the government to solve your problems, because they're god awful about it and they're very expensive at it. So, going into government solving problems, today supposedly the caucus is looking at deciding between a school choice bill or the gas tax bill. Now, of course, I wish I could tell you, because it's a Republican caucus, this is what they're going to come out with, would be the school choice bill. However, with how things have been going, it'll probably, as we know, be the gas tax bill. Now, I hear you guys when you're like, oh, why are we calling? Why are we emailing? They're clearly not listening to us. They're doing whatever they want. They won't pay attention. They won't whatever. And at the end of the day, you have to say to yourself, why am I calling and emailing? You're doing it for a simple reason. We are demonstrating there's a large amount of pissed off people. That's the first thing we're doing, guys. This process is very simple. We voice our opinions, and we need to voice them often and loud. When you vote is not when your voice is heard. That's when you punish them for not listening to you. Your voice is heard when they're in legislative session, and you yell as loud as you can. You call, you email. I get it. They're not listening. I don't care. We're still going to call and email. We're still going to do everything we can to advocate for the correct bills be passed, so that way, as we work them out of office, they understand that if I have this many pissed off people call me about an issue, I don't pass it. And as you start removing them from office, you start having more control over what's going on. The quote-unquote extremists, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, all the left have been doing it for a while now, and we're seeing how that's pushing them left. And we can claw back our liberties and rights, but it is a process. And if you expect to win this through a couple phone calls and emails in a couple of months, you're wrong. We've lost it over 30, 40 years. We're not going to gain it back in 3-4 weeks. It's going to take several years process, and I just need you guys to know that that's what it's going to take. So, What they're choosing is between a school choice bill, supposed and gas tax bill. Now, of course, they have a lot of different bills they could be also looking at. Of course, we have the, no more mask bill if they really wanted to do that. Now, what's funny is when people have been emailing about the no mask bill, some of the Republicans have been like, oh, no, I believe in masks, everything. Just stop, Republicans, okay? I go to all the meetings. We all go to all the meetings. We all go to the Young Republican meeting. I just came from a Northern Kentucky Young Republican meeting. The Republican Party meetings, the Women Republican of Central Kentucky meetings, the Women Republican meetings, the all the different meetings. We all go to them. Funny enough, most of you are not there, but whatever. But most of you, leadership isn't there, but from time to time you're there, you speak, whatever you say, and at the end of the day, there's never anybody wearing a mask. We know that. There's never anybody wearing a mask, okay? I know how you guys feel about it. You know how you feel about it. Just pass the bill. Stop worrying about that. In the emergency lockdown, you've got that bill in front of you. You might as well do that now. Pass them all. Pass HB 360. Pass every single one of these anti-COVID bills and just watch them all try to argue them in court. Let's tie them up with it. Let's have some fun with it at this point. Come on, guys. Let's have some fun with it. All right? But anyways, we're looking at school choice bill or gas tax bill. Now, clearly, school choice bill would be the way to go. It'd be the perfect time, especially after you just did HB 208, which does, under Section 1, subsection 2, allow schools to be NTI only next year if they submit a plan by May 31st, I do believe, or May 1st to the Commissioner of Education for the next school year. But that being stated, it'd be a great time to go ahead and throw in school choice. So that way, come next year, these public schools, you can punish them for not listening to the people and to the people who go to school there. And, I think that'd be a good time to do it, but you're probably not going to do it because that's a bold move. And, this isn't the time. You guys don't, apparently, when you've got a super majority, want to do bold moves because I don't know. But you don't. Well, I know why. Because if you solve a problem, we can't keep coming to you and electing you to do it. So you're best off not solving the problem is what you think. However, we're going to start electing people that actually are going to solve these problems. So, of course, then we have the gas tax bill, which, of course, they think they need to pass because, the road fund needs more money. So because the road fund needs more money, they go ahead and decide, hey, we want to increase this gas tax bill. Well, today, I don't know if you guys noticed, I posted two things. I posted about how two things on what's called taxpayer-funded lobbying. So there are government organizations, and a lot of states have legislation about this. Kentucky doesn't, something that I'm sure I will be focusing on in the next several years, but is taxpayer-funded lobbying. And basically is where taxpayer-funded groups like the health department can go out and spend taxpayer dollars lobbying on their behalf. Same with Fayette County Public Schools. And so Fayette County Public Schools had spent about $20,000 this year on lobbying. And then the health department actually has spent right around $80,000 about-ish on lobbying over the last, I found over the last 15 months, which is 3 times more than what they've spent over the prior 18 years on lobbying. Just in the last year, in several months, they've spent 3 times that, which, shocker. But right there, that's $100,000 of taxpayer-funded lobbying just out of Fayette County Public Schools and the health departments this year. That's $100,000. Now, you want to look at me and say, I need to raise your gas because the road fund needs more money. When you have public schools spending $20,000 a year on lobbying, you have the health department spending $80,000 a year on lobbying. And I'm going to have to sit down and look through, but I guarantee you there is at least several $1 million of taxpayer-funded lobbying going on. And you want to tell me that the gas tax needs to be increased while you have that going on? I pass by billboards advertising whatever government information you want to pass out, whatever government, new government initiative you decide you want to spend my tax dollars on advertising. I pass billboards, I get your ads, I get your emails, I get your phone calls about it, I get your texts about it, and all that is spending taxpayer money. Meanwhile, one of your key functions The roads is lacking, and your response to that is, I need to raise your taxes for that because I can't stop putting up billboards and I can't stop taxpayer-funded lobbying because, well, then my guys, my friends, I wouldn't be able to funnel them money through taxpayer dollars. I wouldn't be able to shift my constituents' wealth into the pockets of lobbyists if I did that. So instead, I'm going to need to increase your gas tax because, well, that's what I have to do because, well, quite frankly, I don't think you get me elected. I think these people do. I think money does because we don't show up in the primaries historically, and that's why they feel like they can do this to us. But don't worry, guys. We're going to be pushing back on this very hard over the next year or so. And we will be, after legislation lets out, we're going to be doing some classes on these things. We've got the Kentucky Liberty Foundation. We also have a few other vehicles that will be rolling out to make sure that we can keep fighting back and pushing back against these terrible policies that we've seen coming out of this Republican Party this year as well. So anyways, kind of moving on from that, we can talk a little bit about the impeachment findings. I haven't really did a deep down dig into the impeachment report before. As far as it goes, I'm not going to get super deep into it. I've just been seeing members of the committee, the 4 Republican members of the committee, coming out and saying things like, oh, well, just didn't, trying to act like it's a factual thing. Here's the facts. Here's what the board saw. Did the governor break the law? Yes, he did. They do not disagree that he broke the Constitution. The disagreement is on whether or not they think it raises to the level of impeachable offenses. And they admit in the report that is their opinion. It is of their opinion that the governor can break the Constitution and it's not impeachable. Now, historically speaking, there's issues where sometimes government officials overstep a line, and the whole litmus test is, did they do it on accident or not? The key thing to understand and why we are telling them to call witnesses and what they were supposedly supposed to be investigating that they never actually fully did was whether or not the governor knowingly violated First Amendment rights. See, it's a different thing to be in whoopsies, to be an accident. But if you say, I know this is a First Amendment rights violation, but I'm going to do it anyways, and if that's recorded down and there's witnesses to that, that's a whole different animal than a whoopsies. That is you on purpose breaking the law. And that is a big problem. And in fact, like I said, the treasurer, Allison Ball, she found that is the case, that there was communication saying he knowingly violated the First Amendment. In fact, Sixth Circuit Court says, hey, we definitely see some indications that he knowingly violated the First Amendment. And so they didn't fully investigate how knowingly he did. I think it is because, once again, the Republican Party of Kentucky leadership did not want that impeached because, once again, they want the big bad wolf of Beshear to keep running against over the next several years. Like I said, I think that will blow up in their face because blame has shifted. It is now everything Beshear does that is wrong will always be also put on the Republicans for not impeaching him. And so that's a big problem for you guys. I think you're underestimating what kind of problem that's going to be. I think you don't show, like I mentioned earlier, you don't show up to your own meetings most of the time. You're not listening to your own voter base anymore. You're out of touch with it. And man, that is why you do not understand how much they will continue to blame you. And so quite literally, once again, getting back to the impeachment findings, it's said in there that it is of our opinion. It's up to the person looking at the legislator looking at it. It is their opinion on whether or not something rises to an impeachable standard or not. And what does that mean? Well, what that means is do they think, so this was the question they had to be asked. First question, do I think a governor telling you can't go to church on Easter, and then when you do, sending police out to your church to harass you and then threaten you with criminal charges, and the only reason you didn't get hit with criminal charges was because you went to court and got an injunction put to stop that from happening, do I think that is impeachable? And then the next question is, if you don't, you have to ask yourself, would it be impeachable if the person doing that knowingly knew they were actually breaking the Constitution. Not they interpreted the Constitution to say that they could do it, which I don't know how you in America read our Constitution and then say, I think I can tell you can't go to church. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's crazy. Churches don't even pay taxes. I mean, come on. Churches don't even pay taxes. You think you can tell people not to go to it? That's silly. And actually, the Supreme Court agrees with that finally in Diocese v. Cuomo. But anyways, but if you say no, but then if I add, did he knowingly do it? That takes away this idea of it being a good faith error because you knowingly did it. And that was what they are supposed to be investigating. And that's why they asked for more records. The thing they never did was get those records. And by the way of not getting those records, they never really completed this investigation into the charges fully. They didn't call witnesses. Instead, they wanted to get rid of it because we were bothering them like crazy because they were getting thousands of emails and thousands of calls, and they just wanted the pain to stop. And once they realize that when they get that pain, when their email inboxes are filling up and their desks are full of messages from your phone calls, and once they get that pain and they realize what that means, and what that means is if you don't do what we want you to do as your voters, we will dispose of you. We will get you out of office. Once they realize that's what it means, they start to listen. And remember, guys, it's a process in the sense that we have to now vote them out for doing these things. Now, that was the impeachment finding. Supposedly, a cost bill has been issued. I personally haven't seen it. The way we found out about a cost bill was actually a reporter called one of the petitioners. And they told him, and it's right at, they said it's like $17,750 right now. Now, of course, we're going to appeal that and break that down. And then that supposedly, I guess, gets split amongst the four petitioners. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. As you guys know, we have our donation link up. My portion of it then would be right around about $4,500. I'm going to be honest with you. We have raised beyond that. We've raised right around $7,000. So my portion I can cover, and I can help cover another guy's portion. So if you want to donate to help cover that cost, you're not doing it for me. I want to make that clear. Who you're doing it for is the other petitioners, and you're helping out with that cost bill on their behalf. You're not doing it for me, so don't worry about it on my account. If you want to do it to support me, great. But I just want you to know the money's not going to me. It's going to the cost bill, and it is going to cover the cost bill for these other guys. You guys have already donated enough that my cost bill is covered, and a few more $1,000 to help somebody else start to cover their cost bill. So if you guys want to help, you can do that at donate.broodco.com. Donate.brewedco.com. You can do that there, but you don't feel like you necessarily have to. It is a fight that we decided we wanted to take on, and it is definitely not something you have to help with. That it was just a long shot to impeach a governor that we knew would probably not work, but at least we did more to try to stop tyranny in this state than the entire Republican or Democrat Party combined have done. And we're not even in office. So that tells you that you citizens do have some power, and we can fight. Now, I talk a little more nationally, I guess. We need to start voting with our dollars more. And what do I mean by that? I mean, companies are political, whether you like it or not. So, for an example, a company that the owners of it support and donate to a certain political cause. So for an example, perfect example, here in Kentucky, and listen, I'm not saying, local companies are great local companies. I'm not saying anything, and don't take this as a notion to necessarily protest anybody, but something to understand. A company like West 6 Brewing. One of the owners of West 6 Brewing is Ben Self. Ben Self, up until recently, last couple of months, was the state DNC chair for the Democratic Party. Okay, so when West 6, I'm sure he donates quite a lot to the Democratic Party. So if you don't want to support the Democratic Party, you need to be aware of what the owners of companies do. Because when you buy that product, you are providing dollars into their pockets that then they can turn around and support causes that you don't agree with. And I'm saying voting with your dollars more, and I wouldn't be a proponent of this if it didn't start already. right? If it didn't become a thing where already the cancel culture already exists. As you guys know, the reason why we are the way we are is because we not only try to be canceled by the governor in a way, but we try to be canceled by the community. And instead of shrinking, we actually leaned farther into it. And we said, no, I don't care if I lose everything. I'm not going to be told what to do anymore. I'm tired of being told what to do. I'm tired of trying to hide my beliefs. I was even talking to somebody today at a meeting, and they were talking about how they, normally put a bumper sticker on their car. And this year they for whatever candidates they wanted to support. And this year they felt like it was just not tenable, and they didn't want to do it. And that feeling is being created, is already here, and we can't ignore that. And we've got to start becoming increasingly aware of the politicalness of the companies that we frequent and that we go to. And not everybody's as out as we are. And we kind of did it in reverse order, where most political activists have like an issue, and then they start to advocate for that issue, and then they try to hope to build lists, and they build a platform, and they then try to figure out ways to monetize it to fund the actions, not for them to make money. And trust me, there's a lot easier ways to make money, and this is, and I hear it all the time, where the detractors will come on and say, "Oh man, it's a grift, and it's all about money for you, and everything else." And listen, about money in the sense of saying I'm not in this to lose money, but it's really not about money in the sense that I'm trying to. I'm trying to make it rich off a political stance. It's more so that I was faced with a choice when they tried to close my business. And remember, business owners, we build a business to hand off to our children. And I have a son, and we want to hand off to our children because we want them to be better off than when we started. And it became an opportunity because we built a platform and a voice to make the world a little bit better for everybody else. And you may disagree with our stance, and that's okay. And you may think I'm making the world worse, though I literally don't understand how taking away your ability to control others makes the world worse. If anything, that makes the world better. But, whatever. In your weird world, to those that don't like what we're doing, I'm sure that somehow, some way, because you don't get to control others, you think that's the terrible thing. And I'm sorry to tell you, but it's always good when other people don't get to control others. But anyways, and so it's an opportunity to make the world a generally better place. And so, it's not really in it for the money, but we did do it a little reverse way, where most of the time advocacy comes first. We've kind of got notoriety and we're thrown into it. And then advocacy came when we found our platform, and we were able to talk about things that, we'd always had feelings about. And so, companies are becoming increasingly political, however, and we need to start voting with our dollars, because the threat of losing business is what's causing them to behave this way. I mean, Amazon is literally like, by the way, Dr. Seuss is being canceled. Meanwhile, Amazon's still selling is still selling Mein Kampf from Hitler. So, that's something to keep you in mind. As they're canceling books, Hitler's still, his literally, you want to talk about hate speech, literally hate speech. That is hate speech. Is still being sold on Amazon, but whatever. We're going to cancel these other books. But anyways, and when you see companies start doing that, you have to start voting with your dollars, and it's very difficult, and it's very hard. And I understand that 100%. I really do. However, if we want to make a change, we got to start fighting. We got to start fighting in the trenches and fighting the same way they are. And that's what I have to tell you there. So there you guys go. There's my show for the day. Feel free to comment. The podcast is on Spotify. You can check that out. We're on YouTube too as well. Donate, comment, shop, whatever you want to do. Support us. If you hate us, thanks for watching 34 minutes and listening to 34 minutes of me running my mouth. What's that say about you, though, that you hate me and listen to 34 minutes of it? Anyways, have a great day, everybody.